I think you've treated me really unfairly in the last few weeks, and I've come here to clean up this mess.
Right. So that is your perception of it, and hence we have our first disagreement.
Right.
I don't agree with that. Okay. Sam, you think that everybody's being unfair to you, so whenever you guys have a disagreement, you view them as being defamatory and malicious, etc.
Yeah.
But Sam,
not everyone,
you say
but in this case.
Now, you say incredibly outrageous things, like we should consider a nuclear first strike, right? We should consider torture. We should consider bombing things. So let's go one at a time, right? Then you say that we're the end of journalism and we do defamation. We do all these different things that you've charged us. Well, that's not fair. And then they would come to me and you say, hey, Reza said things that are unfair about me, so that's a questionable video that you've put up because my guest said something unfair about you. And then Salam would say, your guest, Sam Harris, said terrible things about us. You should take that video down. I'm not taking any of them down. That we are being as responsible as we possibly can in airing out other people's views. Just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean they're wrong. So you say Mormons are slightly more absurd than Christians, right? Because you say you take all the absurdity of Christianity and then you add on top of it further absurdity that Jesus is going to come to Missouri, etc. Right. I think those are really good points. But to me, that's the difference between 2 + 2 = 5 or 2 + 2 = 6. Neither one is true, so what difference does it make?
Well, no, this is actually, it's a cute statement, and I think nothing hinges on it, but it's actually a mathematically precise statement. If you think Jesus is going to come back, that's one order of improbability. If you think Jesus is going to come back to Jackson County, Missouri, that actually increases the unlikelihood or decreases the likelihood.
If we're talking about math, it's like dividing by 0. It's equally unlikely that he's going to go to Jerusalem or Missouri. He ain't coming. The whole thing's is Zeus more likely to come to Missouri or to Athens?
It's the specifics that make it less probable. If you just think he's going to come back somewhere, that's one thing. If you think he's going to come back to Jackson County, Missouri, that's less likely. And that is a mathematically true point. This is just probability theory.
Even if I were to grant you that, which I definitely do not grant you, but even if I were to grant you that,
you're going to hear from a bunch of mathematicians who are going to insist that you grant that.
Okay, that's fine, and I look forward to that, and hopefully we'll get 75 pages on that. Sam, what difference does it make? Both of them are totally untrue. Totally untrue. Nobody talked to the Smith. Nobody talked to Jesus of Nazareth. It's made up.
What is this babble?
So it's easy to romanticize who these guys were.
I think this is a small point, Sam. But let me just say on that. But either way, Islam is totally wrong. The doctrine is wrong, etc. Now, the question of whether it applies to all Muslims is where we get into the disagreement.
Well. What an incredibly stupid question.
So if it's a belief that the Quran is the perfect word of the creator of the universe, that is incredibly well subscribed. Every poll I've ever seen on that puts that at 90%. Just wherever
would be the same.
It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. Like, we can talk about those polls, but it's not. It's not in fact the same. It's half of that, right? But when you look at, and also this notion of paradise and martyrdom is the huge variable among jihadists. It's the willingness, it's the eagerness to die, to get and to not only get into paradise yourself, but to get everyone you care about in after you, to get past that velvet rope in the sky.
If anyone is the most dangerous, doesn't it make sense that it is the people looking forward to Armageddon, where we all die, by the way, actively try to make that happen?
Okay.
So much of your writing, you frame Islam as it appears irredeemable. Whereas Christianity is just as violent and perhaps more dangerous because they look forward to and want to execute Armageddon, right?
No, Christianity is not just as violent. Christianity has a history of extraordinary violence, right?
By far, historically, the most violent religion on the planet.
Well, that I don't know what you're lumping into the Christian bin there, but
Muslims didn't start the 2 world wars. Muslims didn't do the Holocaust. Muslims didn't do the Inquisition. They didn't do the Crusades.
Because of Christianity, the world wars were not because of Christianity.
That's complicated. When Christians do it, it's complicated. When Muslims do it, it's not complicated.
No.
It's because of Islam.
No.
It is because of their doctrine, and hence we can talk generally and loosely about Muslims.
Again, we have to be honest about the difference between Christianity and Islam here. And
but I'm not seeing it. We just had a whole conversation about it.
We're not done. So
okay.
the Holocaust was not a straightforward and honest implementation of Christian doctrine. You can't look into the Bible and get a good Christian justification for the Holocaust. What you get with you can't. Not for Christianity. No, it doesn't. It simply doesn't.
First of all, it's in the Old Testament, which is in the Bible. It's people pretend it's not in the Bible. If it wasn't in the Bible, we just have the New Testament.
Jesus and the central message of his teaching does not get you the Holocaust. There's not a straight line there. There is a straight line.
It's like a total excuse, to be honest.
It's not an
excuse.
excuse. Well, where are the Christian suicide bombers? Where are the Christians cutting the heads off of Yazidis? Where's this death cult behavior among Christians?
Don't count. You have to physically cut somebody's head off. That's
right.
why I'm agnostic. That's why I don't believe in any of the religions, right? Because there is a truth. 2 plus 2 does equal 4.
But you're still resisting
you're resisting
specific consequences of specific beliefs.
No, I'm not.
Bad in both contexts. I mean,
that's exactly my point,
It's probably more dangerous to be homosexual in the Muslim world at the moment.
Sam, that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point.
It's probably more dangerous.
My point is that Christians have done worse to homosexuals, but it doesn't really matter because both don't like homosexuals. It says it in the text. It says it in the doctrine, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no need to say Islam is worse or Christianity is worse.
The responsibility to act. It is not babble, Christopher Hitchens.
Why ignore the differences between the faiths?
Okay, hold on. Now, when you say the doctrine of Islam is worse, which we still have a disagreement on that. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe it's not just the religion. That religion, yes, unfortunately contributes to that and is a damaging part of the mix. But obviously, there's also geopolitical factors involved here, which leads them all to the same result. But the Ottomans did rescue hundreds of thousands of Jews from the Inquisition.
The Armenian Genocide was a mass extermination of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks carried out by the Ottomans from 1915 until 1923. It's often considered the first major genocide of the 20th century. Armenia has existed for millennia. The predominantly Christian people lived in eastern Anatolia, being swept up by the numerous empires which conquered the land. At the end of the 19th century, the current rulers, the Ottoman Empire, began to collapse. During the 1890s, the government massacred hundreds of thousands of civilians. The treatment got even worse when a nationalistic group known as the Young Turks took control in 1908. Their goal was to purge the land of any non-Turks. Sound familiar? So once World War I broke out, by 1915 the Ottomans saw the Christian Armenians as a threat, fearing they would help the Christian Russians against Turkey. The genocide started when hundreds of Armenian intellectuals were killed on April 24, 1915. Laws were passed to fully depopulate Turkey of the Armenian minority. Villages were burned. Entire populations walked out into the desert left to die. Killing squads hunted down any survivors. Once again, sound familiar? 2 million Armenians lived in Turkey before 1915. 1.5 million were killed.
Okay, now it was largely for probably business reasons and the empire and the maintenance, but they said, we'll take the Jews off your hands. That's a fact, right?
Yes, but, and the Crusades were a response to 300 years of jihad. I mean, the Crusades were not just, the Christians didn't wake up one day saying, let's just conquer the world. They were dealing with continuous attacks from the Muslim world.
There you go again. So I feel like when I hear you talking about Israel, when I hear you writing about it, or I read you writing about it, it always feels like, well, it's always the Muslims' fault, right? So the Christians, they did the Crusades because they were provoked by the Muslims. And Israel does the bombings where 75% of people are killed are civilians, but the Muslims made them do it, right? So, and you write the Jews are the least of the offenders, right? And so can you not see that when somebody looks at that and goes, boy, that's a nice coincidence. Here we go again. It's the Muslims' fault because the Muslims made the Jews kill the Muslims, right?
If it didn't have that that's different than killing.
You're talking about Christianity in America today. We have a Sharia law with the Supreme Court where 5 Catholics say, no, you shall live under our interpretation of Catholicism. We have a Sharia law with the Supreme Court.
So I completely agreed with you here. So just acknowledge that. I mean, so that's you weren't expecting me to agree with you. You think that I'm sort of on record saying that no, honor killing is purely the result of Muslim doctrine, right? That's not something I've ever believed. I just think
there's tremendous nuance in your points and my points. I don't view anything you say in a blanket statement. That's why I want to have this conversation so that it's clear, right?
But there are circumstances where a person has not been oppressed by anyone. He has no rational terrestrial grievance.
Same with the guys who did Columbine. They weren't oppressed by anyone. They were perfectly middle class.
But we can explain
they lived in
their
good
behavior.
Families.
These guys had obvious mental problems, right?
So
Jared
again,
Loughner.
that's what people are really object to that, because whenever it's a non-Muslim, they have mental problems. When it's a Muslim, well, they don't have mental problems just because of Islam.
Okay, how are all these people leaving normal lives, right? And going in, let's just take the local case of going to fight for ISIS.
All these people, though.
No, thousands of people in 100 countries, many thousands of people.
But out of 1.6 billion people, I mean, how many, we've had, about at most a dozen people from the U.S. leave, including a couple of girls today was in the news.
But it's many thousands, it's many thousands from the free world. Right?
Okay, now, yeah, that's easily explainable. It's a tiny fraction, Sam. And yes, they feel that the Palestinians are being oppressed. They feel that the Holy Land is occupied. They have all these different reasons for it. Okay, so now let me go. I've been dying to go to the viewers' questions.
More babble.